should have it.
Okay, yeah, we're all set now.
Cool. Okay. So hi everyone. I'm Katie. I work at the Foundry, and I'm pretty proficient in Photoshop and Illustrator. So in talking with Jason, he said that you were interested in learning about Photoshop and Illustrator for Instagram posts, maybe marketing products, that kind of thing. So these are the images that this is one of the images I sent to him, and he said it was good to go. So I'll show you kind of my version of this, how to make something like this. And then I have another example that's more similar to this. So this is more like of an artistic kind of form. Can you see the second image? Am I showing my entire screen? No?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
The Instagram story and the Nike tweet. I see.
Oh, okay. Hold on, okay. And then, do you see with the dancer now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So then this is another one, and it's a little bit more focusing on photo editing specifically, with like contrast, exposure, highlights, some overlays, and then we'll do a little bit of Adobe Illustrator and some icons, which are also helpful for like social media marketing. So we'll do the Nike one first. If you want, you can open up a Google page or a Google search page, and I just did like running sneaker Nike, and then just pick an image. There's a lot of great ones here, preferably with a white background, and I'll show you what we can do from there. Let me minimize the screen. Okay, so just do that, and I'm going to use this one. Right click it, save image, name it whatever you want to name it. My downloads are always a mess, so if you have like a folder that you want to make for this, go ahead, but I just do the downloads because I'm lazy. So once you have that, we will go, this is kind of the vibe of what we're going to be making. So we'll do a new file new in Photoshop. And also, anyone interrupt if you have questions, if I'm going too fast. Sometimes I tend to go a little too fast, but just stop me whenever and I will slow down. So,
does it matter if the image we select has a transparent background or?
Nope. So for this, it might be better to do one without a transparent background, just because I'm going to show you how to get rid of the background. But if you have one that's transparent, that's also fine. It's one less step that you have to do.
Yeah, I have a question, and you might be getting this, so I'm sorry to jump ahead. Can you kind of explain, because something that I see that I had to learn, because I would struggle with at first, is the importance of this width, height, and resolution stuff. For people who maybe haven't seen this before, can you kind of talk through like the importance of that? But maybe we're getting there. I just wanted to show that it's touched upon today.
Sure. So I probably should have mentioned that, but if you mouse over, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, there's the resolution, which is 1400 by 1000. So that's like the DPI, the resolution. So it's a high resolution. I think most of these images are going to be high resolution just because they seem like they're pretty official ones. Yeah, this one's 1280 by 1600, but sometimes, the further down you go, the less great quality you have, or if you're looking for something super specific. So if you get something, this is also pretty good, 800 by 800. But basically anything less than 800 is probably not going to be the best quality. It could be pixelated, so you want to try to get the highest resolution that you can get. If you're taking your own pictures, definitely try to use a Nikon or Canon camera, like a nice digital camera. iPhones, the later ones, are also pretty good. Depending on how you upload them, the resolution can get reduced a little bit. I use AirDrop to try to preserve that because I have a Mac. And that works pretty well. So once you have your image, you can pop into Photoshop. Dimensions of this don't really matter. I just made a square. You can do the default ones. You can do whatever you want. So now we're gonna go find our image. So mine's just in my downloads folder. And the best way to import your photo is to take it, drag it, and hold it into Photoshop, into the icon down the bottom, and just let go of it. I might have been too slow. And so see up here, it pops up with another tab, and this is just the image. So this is, if you copy and paste it, it could like get a little weird. But now we have the full image. So what we'll do from here is this is the transform and move tool up here. we'll just take it and drag it into our Nike sneaker demo file and drop it. So now it is in here.
I only have one tab.
Do you have your, so when you drop the image in, I'll X out of this. So from your downloads folder, or wherever you have the sneaker saved, you should be able to drop it into Photoshop down here. And then it makes it a new tab with just the image. So see how it's called Nike sneaker green.jpg.
Right.
And then from here, you should be able to bring it into your artboard. So far, so good, or?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. You can also just like drag and drop it directly into your project. It just, as you can see, like this is smaller than the one that we did it the other way. And sometimes the resolution can get a little messed up, but like honestly, it's usually not that bad. Okay, so now that we have it in here, to transform an image, so resizing, rotating, anything like that, you do Command T, and then you get these little, it highlights the image and you get the little anchor boxes. So Command T for that. And then I want to make it so it fits into my artboard, my canvas. So right now it's overflowing. So I want to make sure that it's all contained so that we can work with it better. So you take one of the corner ones and you can kind of see like, you know, if you're not super steady with it, it'll deform, it'll shrink, it'll whatever. So to make sure that it stays a uniform scale, hold down the Shift key while you drag it, and it's a uniform scale.
Yeah, on my new Babson laptop, because this is something I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
At least for me, and I'm sure you can change this on the back end, when I hold Shift on a Babson laptop, it actually distorts, but FN, or whatever that's called, that key keeps it. So I'm just curious if other people have that, if they have the new Babson laptop.
Yeah, the FN does it better than the Shift on the Babson laptop.
Okay, sorry. I don't.
Oh, no worries.
No, you're good. I mean, because again, I've been through this with the Babson laptop, so I just want to jump in because I think the majority of us know. If I had a Mac, wish I would, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for pointing that out. That's actually really good to know. So I guess the FN, Shift FN, whatever works to get that uniform. And then the annoying thing about Photoshop is every time you do something, you have to like accept it. And I always forget to do this, and I'll probably do this like 10 times in this demo, but just hit the return or the enter key, and that just deselects it. It accepts your transformation, whatever. Okay, so now we have a white background on the shoe. You can't really see because the canvas is white, the background color is white over here. So what I like to do sometimes is just recolor this so I can see what is white and what is not white of my actual image. So to recolor the background, just select the background layer, which is down here in your layers tab. Go to the paint bucket tool, which is in your toolbar, and then change the color to whatever you want. I like to do a color that's not related to the image at all, just so I can make sure I see everything. And just click, and now you can see the background is this blue color, and now we see the complete image where it's white. And we'll change that later too. So the blue is pretty irrelevant, but it just helps us get that contrast. So now we want to get rid of the white background. So to do this, we're going to use the masking tool, which is one of probably the most used tools in Photoshop. I'm sure you'll be using this for your own stuff, but use the quick selection tool, which is over here. This is one of many ways to do it. If you hold down the quick selection tool, there's a sub menu with quick selection and the magic wand tool. So magic wand is nice for big things. And you click the color, it'll take the whole thing. So right now it's showing me this X. I don't know if you guys have that too, but it just means that the photo, you can't apply it. So just click it and it says, okay, could not use, oh, sorry, that's my fault. Right. So it was because I had the background layer selected and not the photo layer selected. So layers are important. That was my fault. I'm sorry. So now I'm on the photo layer, And I can use the magic wand tool. So I'll just click this white background and see how it automatically selects everything that is white. And I can just do a nice backspace, delete it, it's gone. If we were doing the quick selection tool, I would have to go around like this whole thing. I might pick up like the heel while I'm there by accident. So if you have a nice plain background, the magic wand tool is really great. So just do a backspace to delete it. So now you can see it's still highlighted, the part that we just selected. So you need to do Command D to deselect it, and that'll let you manipulate the rest of the photo. So as you can see, we still have this little shadow bit here. There's a little bit under the heel, so we can get rid of those pieces. Let's see, I don't know. Yeah, so the magic wand doesn't really work with this very well just because it's a little bit of a gradient. So we can use the eraser tool, which is also on the sidebar here. You can adjust the size of it by going up here and adjusting with the slider bar. Hardness is also just how like feathered the edges are. So like this is pretty hard, but then if you reduce it down, see how it's like a little bit more blurred, a little bit more feathered out. So we'll do that. And I'm just gonna get rid of the rest of the shadow down here. And for zooming in on the Babson laptops, you can like, because it's a touch screen, you can just like pinch in on it, which is pretty helpful. Pinch in, pinch out. I'm using my trackpad. Yeah, so just doing your best to get all of this.
I have a question about the magic wand as it relates to images that have white elements. Something that I've done in the past, and this might be like a really like backwards, stupid way of doing, which I'm glad you're here for this. Sometimes what I've done is I've upped the contrast and then set it back after using the magic wand. Is that like a dumb way of doing it, or is that something that can work too?
That can definitely work. The only thing with that is if you play with the adjustments too much, sometimes it can make the photo like a little bit too loud or like too pixelated later, not pixelated, but it can adjust like the default settings of like the contrast and everything. So it's definitely doable, but if you're going to be playing with contrast and exposure and levels and stuff later, then you might want to just do your best to use the quick selection or the eraser tools.
No, for sure. Thanks. And honestly, it's something I hope Adobe like does more machine learning for, because it's honestly awful sometimes some of the images I put in and it picks
Yeah,
up the white. But anyway, that's a tangent.
for sure. Okay, so now we have this, and just popping over to, this is like the final version of what we're gonna look like. So we have the shoe here, and you can see there's this little drop shadow. So we're gonna do that part next. So we'll go back over here. We're gonna make a duplicate of this image. So just Command C, Command V. We have our second shoe. Select the bottom layer, which, so over here we can rename these two. So we can do the one on the top is in, the most forefront. So we'll do this one shoe, and then we'll rename this one shadow because we're going to turn it into a shadow. So select this. Make sure you're on the shadow layer. We're going to go to up the top, images, adjustment, and we're basically going to make this image black, and then we're going to blur it out so it's like a shadow. So adjustments, exposure, and just turn the exposure all the way down. So now it's black. Give everyone a second to do that. And hit OK.
Could you also do color overlay for this one, or would that be a different effect?
That'd be different because we're going to change the background color later, and we're going to blur it out. So I would probably just do the exposure, because with the color overlay, it will affect, when you put in other layers, it'll affect how those ones like interact with each other.
No, fair enough.
Yeah. So now to blur it out, we're going to do up at the top menu bar, filter. We're going to go to blur and Gaussian blur. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur, click that, and just adjust your radius. So probably like around here looks pretty good. a little less. I don't know. Whatever. This is more of a feel thing. So however you feel, it looks good. Click OK. Personally, I think the shadow is pretty dark right now, so we can go to the opacity over near the layers area and just slide that down until you get something that you like. So now if we look back at this one, we see the shoe is tilted and it's flipped. So we'll do the same thing over here. What we can do is select both the shoe and the shadow layer. So we transform them at the same time. We'll go to edit, transform, and we're going to do flip. I always get this confused. Flip flip vertical, I think. No, fuck. Okay. Sorry, I always get those two mixed up. Edit, transform, flip horizontal. So it just flips it horizontally for us. We'll go back where we still have both of these selected. We'll do a transform or Command T to do transform. And if you select or hover over one of the corner anchor points, you can see how it's like the little rotate, and we'll just do a rotate. If you want to do a uniform rotate, and it'll do it in intervals, I think it's 45 degrees, no, 15 degrees. So just hold down the shift, or maybe it's the FN key for you guys, and you can get in 15-degree increments. But I kind of like it. Looks pretty good, like right out here for me. I'll position the shoe in the center, and again, just make sure to hit enter to lock that in. So obviously with the shadow, it's not above the shoe. So we just want to select our shadow layer and drag it and just bring it down below our sneaker. So this is an exact like shadow, I guess. So if we look here at this one, see how it's angled down a little bit, just because however, this photograph was taken. We can play with the directions of shadow, so we can adjust it however we want to. So what I did for the original one is I went back to edit, transform, and if we do a perspective one, we can adjust it so it's like angled downwards. We can skew it inward so it's like coming down like this. So that one, yeah, so just do edit, transform, and it's under perspective, and then you get this transform box, and if you just slide it up and down, you'll get this kind of angle, and then or grab the anchor points and make it come in or out. But that one's pretty cool too. And enter again to lock that in. So I just want to bring this up a little bit more so it aligns better with the shoe. Bring this over and bring the whole thing more centered. Is everyone with me so far? Did I lose people?
I had a question. Again, this is just for the sake of like, I would have never thought to do it this way, so I'm glad I'm seeing it. Kind of, can you explain like the difference between this and then the set layer style shadow? Because the layer style shadow does not give you all these options to really have so much control. So can you kind of walk through though? Because again, I use that layer version a lot just because the work I'm doing is not like there's not this much focus where I need to. Just kind of walking through the pros and cons of doing that versus this, maybe just to show the limitations.
Sure. So this one definitely you have a lot more customization because as you saw, we can do the perspective, we could do a warp if we wanted to. The shadow that James is talking about is a layer shadow, so it's under blending options and drop shadow. That's the one you're talking about, right? And so that gives you a drop shadow, and see how it's kind of like this halo effect around the whole shoe. Like you can see I forgot to pick up some of the white spots there, but you can't really tell. So that it's like less controllable. So if we go to the drop shadow menu, you can change the angle of it, and like the opacity still, distance, but it's still uniform with the shape of the shoe. So with the one that we just made, it's like a lot more faded out. It's definitely, I would say it's like a little more accurate. I would use the drop shadow in the layers menu to do things like maybe for text where I just wanted to make it pop out. But I would definitely, if you're looking to get more of that custom shadow, I would probably do it this way.
No, thanks. Because I just wanted to, for the people here, like, just kind of the ease of use. What I like about the layer one is that I can just copy it from layer to layer by doing copy layer style. And of course, I got the little light, but no, this is dope.
For sure. Okay, so now I'm going to change the background color to be a green. So as you can see in this pink one, we have this color that goes pretty well with the Nike check. Oops. All right. So to find a color in your shoe, you go to the, where is it? There's, oh, up here, the eyedropper tool. So this just picks out colors, a color picker. So like, as you can see, I click this and it does the blue, and you can see that change in this bottom left-hand corner. If I'm over here, it turns to that gray color. So I'm gonna pick, let's see, maybe this green, and you can also see it up in this corner too. This is nice. Okay, so then I'll go back to my background layer, and it's the same paint bucket tool that we used earlier, and change that. So it's a little bright. I'm gonna go back here, see if we can get maybe this. That's okay. You can also adjust it now that you have like the color family. You can adjust it up in this top right-hand corner. Yeah, so that's pretty good. So now we want to add text. So as you can see from here, we have some text that's in the foreground, some text that's in the background. This text is like behind the shoe. So that's all with layers. So each of the words is done individually in the layers panel. Let me see, what font is this? Oh, just kidding. Okay. Next one. Okay. So for text, just click the T button down here, and you can type whatever you want. So I think it was, this is, and make sure you set the color to white. So just do that again in the bottom left-hand corner. To scale it, you can either select the text, and then there's like the drop-down menu, just like a Word doc or something. Or you can do another Command T and drag it out. This is how you can also, play with the width and how stretched or wide it is. I'm going to do uniform. And again, enter to accept it. I forget what the font is for Nike, but we'll use this one, that's fine. Okay, so as you can see right now, it's behind the shoe. So that's because this layer right here is underneath our shoe layer. So that's where we want it for now. And then we'll add in the my, Command T, and we'll make it bigger. Enter to accept. It had Nike and ID. Okay, give people a couple seconds to catch up with that. Okay, so as you can see from this one, we have, this is in Maya behind the shoe, which we have ID, which is behind the shadow and the shoe, and then Nike is at the forefront of our image. So if we come back here, we can see, because the ID is behind, is like at the bottom layer right now, it'll be behind the shadow, so that's good. But Nike, it's also behind, but we want it to the front. So easy fix, we just take our Nike layer over in the layers panel and just bring it up to the top. And now it is in the forefront. So you can line them up. It has, Photoshop has like nice little guides that you can see when it's lined up. You see that little pink line. lined up with the bottom of ID. So that's that. What we can do, see how this is kind of italicized, but ours is straight. You can select, select, select all of our text layers. So for me, that's holding on the command key. I think it's the same, or maybe it's control for the PC, not sure. And then we're gonna go to layer, rasterize, and then all layers. So that basically transforms, I don't know if you could see that change in the layers panel, but now they have transparent backgrounds. So that just takes it from a text file, which is known as a vector file, and it transforms it to bitmap or pixels. The difference between vector and bitmap is that bitmap is like the pixelated, so that was what we were talking about earlier with like the resolution, 600 by 600, the DPI. A vector is what we use in Illustrator, and we'll get to a little bit more vector usage later, but basically it's just a bunch of shapes made up and they use anchor points. So no matter how much you zoom in or how much you zoom out, it'll always maintain that uniform size, I guess, so it never gets pixelated. A vector never gets pixelated. So that's why vectors are kind of nice. But you also don't get shading or texture or anything in vectors, so that's kind of the downside. So now that all of our things are rasterized in bitmap, we can manipulate them in Photoshop. So if we want to do a little italics, we can do edit, transform, perspective again, and it select all of them, and we'll just use this top horizontal line. See how I have a little arrow going both ways, and just lean it all a little bit to the right. Enter to confirm, and then as you can see, this is and my got a little cutoff, so we'll just pull these out. We want to make sure they are selected. So this is and my are selected. Hold down Shift or Command and move them out a little bit. And move this one in. Cool. Does anyone have questions about this one so far? Makes sense? Did I lose anyone at any point? I'll take that as a no. So this is great for, demonstrating a product. Nike had like a whole collection of these ones. I think it's personally pretty straightforward. It's mostly just text manipulation, adding that shadow to give it some dimension, and the background color to make it pop. This one's very green, but it's pretty cool. So now we can move on to, let's see, this one. I just found this on Google. I thought it was pretty cool. So how we can start is everyone just Google like a picture of like, you can use a dancer, you can use, doesn't have to be like a dancer, but like maybe a person like with a simplistic outfit. So I have this one, thought she was cool. Same thing, just do save image, name it whatever you're gonna name it, save to your downloads. So this one will be starting off with some similar things, but we're gonna look into more of elements of contrast and exposure. As you can see, like her body is definitely like, the lighting is played with a lot, and we'll do some of the layer overlays as well with that big purple circle and get into more text. Okay, so hopefully everyone has an image. We'll go back into Photoshop, make a new file. And again, the size doesn't really matter for this, but okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. We are going to drag our dancer into Photoshop at the bottom. So she's in her own file. What?
Are you on Zoom?
No, what?
Are you on Zoom right now?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So, yeah, if you want
Sorry.
this is a really cool space.
So now you can select the image and then drag it into your artboard. We're going to resize it again. So just Command T. We have our anchor points. Just bring it a little smaller so we can see the whole thing. Enter to place. And now we want to get rid of the white background. So let's see. I don't know if that's pretty good actually. So I just like to do a quick little inspection. Make sure it didn't cut anything out in the process. So yeah, we have a little bit down here. So just use the quick selection. Zoom in. Again, you can adjust the size up here. I have it set super small because this is not the greatest resolution, but it'll do. And just trace along that line so we get it. Same thing down here with the shoe. Oh. Wait, can you guys still see me?
Yes.
Oh. Sorry, I just got a notification that I was signed out of the Zoom. So I thought it was going to crash. That's weird.
No,
Yeah, no,
it's still
we
working.
see your screen. Yep.
Okay, cool. Hopefully this lasts. All right, so yeah, just trace around there. We're going to get rid of this bit. This looks good. This looks good. A little bit of her leg. Okay, so now that that's set, again, just simple backspace, Command D to deselect. Oh crap, I missed this whole bit. Sorry. Okay, great. Command D to deselect, and then we missed this part, so we'll just go back in and grab it. And backspace. There's like the photographer's name at the bottom. So you can either do a quick select, but it's probably gonna come out a little messy. So instead we can use the marquee tool, which is just the same thing, but it's a square or a rectangle. Click, drag and drop, delete. You could also, if it was like a weird shape, maybe if it didn't fit into a square, you can use the lasso tool, which is right below it. Draw a circle around it. Same thing, delete. I missed part of the Y, so we'll get that. Delete. Cool. So now we have her all cut out. If we look back at this image, you can see that her body is like pretty dark, black and white, but like the leotard or whatever it is like still pink. So how we're gonna do that is similar to what we've been doing. We're going to select.
We have a question before you move on.
Yeah.
Okay, we're trying to do the magic wand, and it keeps saying that our thing is not able to be deleted. We click on it, we click on it, we do delete, and it says, could not complete your request because the smart object is not directly editable.
Ah, okay. So try going to layer. Your raster should light up, and then just click raster layer. See if that works.
Oh yeah, it works. Thank you.
Yeah, so that happens sometimes. It just depends how you import your images. But if that ever happens, you can just do the layer rasterize, or like sometimes I forget which menu it's in. You can also do the same thing by clicking the eraser tool and just clicking anywhere, and it'll be like I think it's like the same error message, but it'll be like, do you want to rasterize your item? And then you just say yes. So it's another shorter hack, I guess. Okay. So now that we have her, we're gonna go back to our quick select tool, we want to select basically all of her like body. Do that. Oh, and I forgot to mention earlier, but there's like the deselect and the select, or just like regular. So if you right here, I grabbed some of the leotard by accident, so I want to go to the deselect and then just do that. But say like, oh, I messed up here, then go back to the positive select and do that. You can also change it by, if you're in the negative one, you can change it by holding the shift key. See how the it changes to the plus and minus when you hold down shift. And again, that might be the FN key for you all. So now that looks like we have all of her like limbs highlighted. Get this little piece in here. Now we'll start with the exposure and contrast to make it more of the dark and unsaturated bit that we saw in the original image. So to do that, we go up to image adjustment. First, we'll make it black and white. So just go hue and saturation, and just bring your saturation all the way down. And click OK. The rest of this is more of like a feel kind of vibe. There's no really set formula to adjusting your photos. It's just play with it until you get something you like. But the adjustments that I like the most are hue and exposure if I want to make it black and white. Regular exposure, sorry, hue and saturation for black and white. Exposure, brightness, contrast, and curves are okay if you know how to use them, but aren't really the greatest in my opinion. So we'll look at exposure next. So that was the same thing we did to just make that sneaker shadow black and white. So if you do this, obviously it's gonna black out. But if you do more exposure, it lightens it up, so we get more of that contrast. So do something like that. Offset is also darker darks, whiter whites. A little bit of that. Let's see, brightness, contrast. You can give it more contrast and darken it up a little bit. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, this is definitely a feel thing, and you can definitely go back to, if you've already done the brightness contrast tab, you can definitely go back after looking at exposure, just play around with it. There's, like I said before, there's really no set like formula to how to do this. It's just a feel and like what looks good. So give it a couple minutes to play with that. I'll do a little bit more too. And if you don't like something, obviously you can just click cancel or do a Command Z. Okay, so now if we look back at the original, her leotard thing is like pretty pink. This one's like not that blue, so we're gonna fix that. So what we can do is select all of the leotards, so same thing, use the quick select tool. Do this, very nice. Get rid of her leg. Yeah. And grab this piece. Okay, so we have most of it selected, which is great. Another thing in the adjustment section is the color balance. So this will adjust the color, obviously. originally it was blue, so we want to gravitate towards more of our blue panels or blue levels. So as you can see, as I move the slider closer to the cyan, it definitely gets like a lot more teal, a lot more, I mean cyan obviously. If we were going to go towards red, makes it more red. Everything, if it's lined up perfectly in the middle, that's just like neutral reset. So I'm gonna move this one a little bit this way. We'll do the blue maybe. Blue's good. Cyan more. So it's very, very bright, which is how I like it, I guess. I'll hit OK. And again, Command D to deselect. If you forget to do the deselect, I forgot to do the deselect, and now I want to, I don't know, erase her hand. I don't know why I would do that. Like, I'm on the eraser tool and I can't erase it because it's not selected. I can erase in here. But that can like really trip you up sometimes, especially if you forget that you're selected, because you're like, why isn't this transformation working, or why isn't this writing? It's because when you're selecting something, it only allows you to work in the selected area. So now that we've deselected, Command D, I can do whatever I want over here. Okay, cool. So look back at this image again and see how the layers that are like, you know, around her or like of the skirt part are more solid, but then this part is like pretty translucent. So I would probably define that as this area over here, probably this, like maybe this piece too. Yeah. Yeah, so how we can do that, oh, I lost this. So how we do that is, again, just in the opacity section. Whoops. Whoa. Oh, sorry. You want to cut and paste it and make it a new layer because the opacity affects the entire layer. So just do Command X, Command V, and we can line it back up again with that section. And enter to place. And now we can lower the opacity some, so it gives it that like translucent vibe. You can also, again, play with the brightness and contrast and make it, you know, more, make the folds of the fabric stand out more by upping the contrast, maybe do some with the exposure. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Lower this a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So now we have this, and the next piece is this circle that's here. So for that, you can just go down to towards the bottom. It's an ellipse tool. If you hold it down, there's a submenu with rectangles, rounded rectangles, polygons, lines, or a custom shape. But we're going to use the ellipses tool. To make it an even circle as opposed to an oval or something else, I hold on the Shift key. Again, for you guys, it might be the FN key, but just hold it down and draw your circle. Once it's drawn, this properties menu will pop up, and this just gives you, you can adjust the width and height, the placement, all of that kind of thing if you need it to be precise. You can also change the outline or the stroke and the fill. So I'm going to get rid of the stroke, so just click here and click X. So stroke is gone, and then we'll make this like a blue color or something. So now that we have this, if you look at this image, it's kind of like overlaid on top of this. So you could use the opacity, but it looks kind of whack. I don't know. But another option are the blending options here. So I think James was talking a little bit about this earlier, but there's a bunch of different options. And honestly, sometimes it's fun to just like click on them and see what they do. So this one like does some weird stuff to your leg. If you do like a difference one, it's like the inverse. So that is cool for projects. I don't know, not this, that actually looks kind of cool. But the one we're gonna use is multiply. So that's like a color burn onto here. This is The multiply and screen tools, so screens down here, are also really good if you've ever seen an image that has like a smoky overlay to it. If you're in Google, you can just search like smoke overlay, and there's like a bunch of these images that are like smoky, and you can overlay those too. So I'm just doing this really fast, but you would use the screen option and then see how it gets rid of the black and you're left with just the smoke effect, and you can position this wherever you want. But those are also really cool too if you want to get that kind of vibe. Same thing with like if you've ever seen the light overlays or like the camera flash kind of thing, or like the sparks drawing with the light stick or whatever, the sparklers, I don't know what they're called, but those are all super easy Photoshop overlay effects, and it's all done with basically screen and multiply, which is great. So I'll just delete that. So now we have this. Let's see, pull the image. Yeah, so that's pretty good in comparison, I would say. We can add text here in Photoshop the same way we did before, or we can do it in Illustrator. So I'm going to show you how to do it in Illustrator just because we did the text in the Photoshop for the Nike one. So I'm going to select all these layers. So just click the top one, hold on the Shift key, click the bottom one, it selects all of them, do Command T, and I'm just going to make it a little bigger for when we export it. And return, enter, and we'll save this. Do export, export as. Do JPG, export all. So it's my downloads. And it's here. Cool so far. Now we're going to open up Illustrator. So same processes for making a new Illustrator file as a Photoshop file. So just file new, change it however you want. We'll do like a 8.5 by 11 as, say you're making a flyer, for instance. Name it, whatever you want. Now we have your artboard. So similar setup to Illustrator, or similar setup to Photoshop. You have your toolbar on the side over here, and then you have your layers over here. This is my library. I have a bunch of images that I've just transferred over back and forth. You can open the properties panel, but for the most part, we'll be using layers and then all of our tools over here. So same process to import a photo, just drag it over, drop it into the Adobe Illustrator file. Now it's here, and we will bring it up and into our tab. So Illustrator is a little different with layout. Why is this weird? Okay, so as you can see, our artboard is this black rectangle, and there's a spillage, like an overflow. But if you saw in Photoshop, if we were to move this over, like you don't see the excess. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter other than in Illustrator, if you have different elements that you don't yet want in your artboard, in your piece, you can drag them off to the side and have them hang out for a minute while you work on other stuff and then drag them back in. Whereas Photoshop, they're like lost in the abyss forever. Okay, so we'll just resize this, make it look nice. Placement, all right. You don't have to hit enter on Illustrator, you just click out in positions. For my background images, I like to lock the layer. So just over in your layer area, you can click, there's like these empty boxes next to the eye. So the eye hides and reveals it. So right next to that, you can lock it. So now, even if I try to click over here, I can't do anything to it, which is nice because, if it's not locked and you're trying to do something, you might move it by accident. So that's nice to have for Illustrator, because Photoshop, you have to actively select layers. So now we're gonna add some text. Let's see, this says dance and video. So text tool, same, click over here, click wherever you want it, and we'll do dance and video. You can change the font same way, up at the top, just like a Word document, something like that. And again, to resize it, we can either just change the size over here or use the selection tool. It looks a little different than the Photoshop
I have a
one.
question.
Yeah.
What exactly is the difference between Illustrator and Photoshop?
Sure. So I touched briefly about this earlier, but I'll definitely explain it more now that we're in Illustrator. But Illustrator is vector-based, so it's more shape-based. If you like zoom in here, like see how it like never gets pixelated? It's just like a continuous, like nice solid thing.
Oh, okay.
But then if you pop over in, where's the Nike one? In here, if you zoom in, like see how it, like see how the font is pixelated, the text is pixelated?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like the main difference. Photoshop, you can do all the like exposure, brightness, contrast things that we did to both images, I guess. And Illustrator, you don't get that control because it's not vector based, or because it's not bitmap based.
So Illustrator is a lot more, I guess, more finished product, kind of cleaner, just straight edge lines.
It depends what you're trying to do. So personally, I prefer Illustrator because I'm working more in like designs that I create and more shape-based things.
Right.
So I'll show you this. So this is what this is a workshop that I'm running later, and I'm making like an advertisement for it. So as you can see, like it's text, and then it's like the logo, and then we have these icons that I downloaded. But it's more like solid based, and it's like all shape based. But if you were doing like advertising for a product, you might want to use Photoshop, so you can really highlight that product, play with the exposure, contrast, add those drop shadows that we did with the Nike one. If that makes sense, I guess. I like to move between the two, so if I'm doing something that would be like for a product, I would edit it in Photoshop, but then I would bring it to Illustrator to do the text, kind of like what we're doing here. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, so you can use a selection tool and just make it bigger. You can also hover over one of the corner anchors and you get that little rotation thing, and just hold on the shift key to get the nice, I think it was in 45-degree angles, and we'll resize it again. So that's cool too. This text is text, so you can edit it, you can, you know, whatever, like that. What's cool about Illustrator is you can, it's called creating outlines. So this is text that's editable, but if we do a right click and we do create outlines, the text itself is no longer editable, but we can do things like drag this closer and drag this closer. So it gives it more of like, more control over the text. So, you know, bring this up, bring this over, that you can't do when it's in its regular text form. So I'll just reset that. Let's say this was an advertisement for like a dance studio or something, and we had an Instagram handle or a Facebook that we wanted to incorporate down here, or like a company logo. What we can do is, say you want to add the Instagram and you wanted to put like an Instagram icon to like distinguish it as Instagram. So you can search up Instagram, Insta icon from Google. Got a nice variety of these. I would pull like a black and white one. So this one looks nice. You can copy paste it, or you can, for like icons like this, because we're gonna vectorize it in Illustrator. And again, as I mentioned before, the vectorizing makes it so that no matter how big or how small you get, it'll always be uniform and it'll never get pixelated. I personally don't mind just copying, pasting it into the document because it's faster and I'm lazy. But if you'd rather do the long way to make sure you get the nicer quality, that's fine too. So we copied it, we'll paste it. This is still a bitmap, so you can see we zoom in and it is pixelated. You also can't change the color on it. But what we're gonna do is something called, we're gonna create basically the same thing we did to the dance font, is create the outlines. So what we can do is go to Object, Image Trace, Make and Expand. So image trace is literally tracing the image and creating shapes out of the image. So as I said before, Illustrator is shape-based, so that's what this is doing. It's tracing it and making it into shapes. And by doing it this way, it's only gonna do black and white. So we'll do Make and Expand, and now see, let me unclick out. It did it really fast because it's a pretty simple image, but now it's not pixelated anymore. We also expanded it, so now we can manipulate it. So if we just double click in, we can get rid of the white parts. So we're left with just this black logo. Cool. Resize it, same as you would. Make sure you're selected. Hold on the Shift or FN key, whatever works for you, for that uniform scale. And we can bring it down here. So now you can also change the color of it. So you can, there's preset colors here, or you can use the eyedropper tool and click this color, maybe I want it this color, whatever works. Make sense so far? Honestly, I went through that really fast. So please let me know if you have questions with image tracing, because that's actually super helpful. Okay. So now that we have the Instagram icon, place it wherever. Let's add our handle. I don't know, dance and video. I don't know, blue dancers. I don't know, whatever. Rescale it. Drag it over, and that's more of the icons. I showed you this earlier, but it was for the Foundry. There's this really cool site called the Noun Project. You need an account, but it's free. I mean, they'll sell your email address probably, but it is what it is. And you can literally search any icon. There's thousands to choose from. So let's say you want a dance one. Search, and you get all of these. They're black and white. They're great. They're free. You just have to the download process is a little bit long, longer than I would want, but get this icon, choose the basic download. You get this, but you can easily delete it once you're tracing your image in Photoshop or in Illustrator, sorry. But this is a great site, especially if you're looking to do a lot of icons or something like that. Let's say you wanted to trace, so the images I've showed you so far are just black and white. So this is black and white. The logo, the Instagram icon was black and white. Let's say you had a clip art, let's see. Yeah, let's say we had this one that we wanted to put in, and it's in color, right? So if you do the regular object image trace, make and expand, it's gonna be just the black parts, which obviously probably don't want. So what you can do is instead, I have this window already open because I use this feature a lot, but you can go to Window and Image Trace and just make sure that's selected. And this is all of the image trace tools essentially. So we'll go to color, under mode, black and white. That's what we've been doing, black and white, but we'll switch it to color and trace. And it'll take a second. But okay, this was probably a low res image, which is why I got rid of her eyes. But now you can see that it has, it's not pixelated anymore, and it has almost all the details, but this is the the vectorized version of that. So that's great if you have clip art or icons you want, just make sure they're probably high res, so you don't lose any eyes. And that's kind of all I had planned for this workshop. I know it was a lot, but thanks for sticking with me. Does anyone have any questions or?
I have one question. First of all, thank you so much for hosting this. Back to the Nike one earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't necessarily have anything to do with like Photoshop, but is there a way to like basically scan another image like the Nike one for the font? Like if you wanted to get the exact Nike font, like is there a way to do that? Or maybe that one's unique to them, but just to identify a font from a photo, is that possible?
I don't know any way to do it personally. There's a lot of like great font blogs. Like defont.com has like 1,000 fonts, but they also have like font blogs, and they're usually pretty good about like popular brands. But I personally don't really know like a way to like do that. If you're looking at a big brand, you know, like Nike, Apple, whatever, I'm sure their brand style guide is public, so you could probably look up there too. But I know I always am like searching for fonts, like, you know, 3 pages deep in Google searches. But I don't know of like a more efficient way to do it other than just research.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Does anyone else still on the call have any more questions? Otherwise, thank you again so much. I know some people had to leave early and some weren't able to make it just because it was a Friday afternoon, but we have the recording and we'll definitely circulate that around. So again, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let me know if you have any questions or if anyone has, you know, personal projects they want to work on and need help. I did my best to try to cover most of the important things, but I know it was a little fast at some points, but yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
You guys too. No problem.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.